Guys, I'm Ryan,
And I'm Katie.
and you're listening to The List as we continue our top 100 countdown of the greatest movies of all time to let you know whether they're truly worth watching or if you should put them on your chuck it list.
I'm glad you threw it in there.
Today, we are going over 1975's Nashville, directed by Robert Altman. Have you ever been to Nashville, Katie?
Going on down to Nashville, Tennessee. They always having a good time down on the bayou. No. I've never been to Nashville.
You never been to the Grand Ole Opry?
I've not been to the Grand Ole Opry. I have been to Gatlinburg, Tennessee many a time. I went every year on my birthday for many years. It's Nashville adjacent. I've been to Chattanooga. And by I've been to Chattanooga, I mean I have driven through Chattanooga, which is treacherous. That's a treacherous journey. Almost the same as Frodo and Samwise Gamgee took.
I don't know if you speak English. Nashville.
I'm just telling
Chattanooga.
You asked a question and I gave you an answer.
They sound nothing alike.
And then also additional, I gave you even more than you asked for. Some people call that a bonus, a tip, icing on the cake. Why are you complaining? Do you complain when somebody tips you at work? I hope you're not getting tipped at work. Like that would be unethical.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. I would totally take those tips.
Speaking of awesome,
from all those people who cannot pulverize their own kidney stones.
Their own kidney stones, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of awesome, I did want to point out that we got another new comment on Spotify this week.
Oh, let's hear it.
From one Lydia Fussell, who says that she is only here for Katie's hilarity. Thank you. Thank you.
That's why I'm here. I mean,
it's also why I'm here. That's interesting. I live for my own hilarity. So. Thank you, Lydia. I'm glad you're enjoying the podcast. Thank you for hanging out with us. And she also said something else. It was less important to me. I don't really remember the rest of it, but it was something about movies. I don't know.
You just tuned it out after she said,
yeah, that's all I needed to see. Yeah.
I get that. Yeah,
for sure. Anyway, I didn't want to, that was the most important topic of the podcast today. I didn't want to forget that. So I slipped it in real fast there. And now we can move on.
Cool.
To talking about Chattanooga. I'm just kidding.
Nashville.
Let's go.
So Nashville from 1975 was directed by Robert Altman and covers 24 character stories as they spend 5 days in Nashville, Tennessee, and they intermingle with some of the stars there in Nashville, the country music stars and gospel stars, and there's this interwoven political background that goes along with it. It's a really complex story. You can imagine trying to keep up with 24 different characters, but we'll just leave it at that. Got some interesting facts about this movie. So this movie was actually offered by United Artists to Robert Altman, and he said, "No, I'm not gonna do the script that you want me to do. I'm gonna do my own." And so what he did was he sent out a writer to go investigate Nashville, Tennessee, because he'd never been there. And a lot of the events that occurred during this movie actually are based on some of the actual events that happened to the writer as they went through and journaled their visit.
That's crazy. So almost like Opal.
Not all of them, but like that car wreck in the very beginning where they were stuck for about 2 to 3 hours in the summer heat. That was based on real events. And I guess just some of the other, scenes where people would go and play music and the Grand Ole Opry and just kind of what life was like there in Nashville. So I thought that was pretty interesting. This movie was nominated for 5 Academy Awards.
Wow.
For Best Picture, Best Director.
I believe both of those.
Best Supporting Actresses for 2 of the actresses in this movie.
In this kind of movie, who is the supporting? Are they all supporting actresses?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Ronnie Blakely, the one who played Barbara Jean, was nominated for a Best Supporting Actress.
Okay.
And Lily Tomlin, the one who played Linnea.
The mom?
Yeah, the mom of the Death Kids. She was also, and this was her debut film.
Really?
Yeah.
So how old was she? Do you know?
That I don't know.
Okay. I find it,
she had never done any acting in a film before that. She'd done some television work, but never any film.
Remind me to say something about that when we get further into the acting. I'd like to comment on her acting and one specific scene. If anybody in that movie was going to be the star actress, it would have been the girl who played Barbara Jean. So then I'm just assuming that in an ensemble this big, it's just everybody is a supporting actress then.
Yeah, I don't know who the lead role actress would be.
It would have had to have been Barbara Jean,
but
yeah.
Yeah, but supposedly this was a supporting actress role that she got nominated for.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how they qualify that. But anyway.
Yeah, that I'm not sure about. And then the final one was Best Original Song in a Motion Picture. And
I believe.
And it actually won an Academy Award for that, and that was
Don't tell me which one. Don't tell me which one. Can I guess?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a good song. Really good song. There's a couple good songs in here.
Great songs.
I'm not a big country music fan, but
me either.
There are some songs in here that I thought were really good.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that a lot of the actors who played these characters wrote those songs. So the actor who sang "I'm Easy" actually wrote that song, and he wrote, I think, 2 other songs. He wrote the very last song at the very end of the movie. And I want to say one other one. I can't remember the name of it right now. But
did you know that he and the girl who played Mary were actually in a relationship together? And I think they did a couple of other movies together too.
Yeah, they were actually boyfriend and girlfriend at the time is what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last fun fact is that the character of Opal, who was the British journalist doing all the interviews for the documentary.
Maybe the most annoying character in the whole movie.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, we'll get into that.
I didn't think so, but she was definitely interjecting herself in every conversation.
Very annoying to me,
but her name is Geraldine Chaplin, and she's actually the daughter of Charlie Chaplin.
No way.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Now that you mention it, she has a very distinct look about her, and I can believe that. That's very interesting.
Pretty neat.
She's still annoying. Maybe she should have tried a silent film.
Her character, I thought she did great as her character.
She did play it very well.
Her character was definitely very nosy and interjected herself into everything she possibly could.
For sure.
All right.
Those were interesting facts.
Thank you. I worked very hard on that.
Yeah.
Super hard.
Did you ask Jeeves?
Ask Jeeves.
That was a throwback.
Yes.
Used to love that. Okay.
My butler, Jeeves. So what did you think overall, just generally speaking of this film?
The whole picture or just story-wise?
Whichever one you want to talk about.
This movie was a Norman Rockwell painting in motion. It was a picture of American life. It was like Americana. It was breezy and a stream of consciousness and defied everything you're supposed to do when you make a story. Where was the story structure? It was kind of in there. I loved it. I loved this movie. That's why I wanted to know what you wanted to talk about. Because if we're just talking overall, I loved this movie. A lot.
Me and you are going to have very different opinions about this movie. No, I am. Overall, general sense, this was not a very enjoyable movie to me.
Really?
But there was some parts that I was like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
Overall, not my favorite that we've watched.
Huh.
And I'll tell you why. So,
okay, tell me why.
Let's talk about story then.
Tell me why.
So first of all, for me, it was just so slow, so aimless, especially the first hour and a half. Like, this is a 3-hour movie. The first hour and a half was really hard for me to get into. It was really not until the last 45 minutes or so when stories started to come together and actually began to be very interesting. But just the lead up to that took so long. It was tough for me.
I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like from the beginning, a lot of times a movie will ramp up and towards the end you can feel things culminating, or you can feel the tension or suspense is building or whatever. You can feel the rise and fall of the story. But I felt this entire story, I just felt like it was always on the same baseline. It was just a picture of life. And there was never a point where I was like, okay, this is getting interesting now. From the very beginning, I just felt sucked into it. I felt like it was like a warm blanket you want to get under and just snuggle under and stay there and sit and watch and exist inside of. You almost feel like a fly on the wall of these 24 people's lives. And there's plenty of things happening, but nothing's happening. And you're not watching for that. You're watching just to see a moment in all of these lives as they weave together like a tapestry. I loved it from the beginning. I never felt like it had to pick up. I felt like it was always just what it needed to be from the first scene.
I didn't feel that way at all.
Wow.
There was an ebb and flow, and didn't happen until the end of the film for me. I get your point where I thought it felt very authentic to what Nashville was really like and what that time period was like. So as far as that goes, I think he nailed that on the money. Like, that was perfect.
Even if it wasn't authentic to what Nashville was like, he made me believe it was. He made me believe that this was just life happening.
This is how it was. Yeah. Part of it, I think, was, like I said, I'm not a big country music fan, but I did enjoy a lot of the musical numbers, and there's a lot of musical numbers in here. There's almost an hour worth of just musical numbers itself.
And can I say that at one point you were like, I didn't want to say it because I don't like to talk about it during the movie. I like to save it for this. At one point during the movie, you were like, man, we could just fast forward through this. Like, what is this? We could just fast forward through it. And I was like, no, every second of it, I'm like, wanted to soak up every bit of it. Even when they were just playing music, the director was making sure something else was happening in those moments, like looks or little conversations or plus I just loved the music. Anyway, continue.
No, there's some really good music numbers in there. And what I learned about this film was that all of the musical numbers were recorded live.
Really?
So some of these people can sing
talent
really good. And all the country music stars in this film were based on real people.
No way.
Yeah.
And do you know who they are?
I had a big list, but you know, some of them are.
I probably wouldn't recognize any of them anyway.
Older country stars, but they even had like Loretta Lynn. So
really?
Supposedly, Barbara Jean was based on Loretta Lynn.
Yeah.
They had like Dolly Parton as the Karen Black character.
The one who was running away from her husband?
The one in the red dress that was kind of the rival with Barbara Jean.
Oh, yeah.
That they wouldn't set stage on.
Yeah.
Like Dolly Parton.
That's interesting. So he just kind of drew from them. Okay.
Yeah, they drew off real characters in real life, which some of them didn't really care for, supposedly after the movie came out. But I thought it was interesting to make it kind of realistic. What made this movie really hard for me, and I guess this kind of plays into the cinematography, is that the sound in this movie, it was so distracting to me. Like, it was just like everybody talking all at the same time, and in the background there's music, and then also there's this political truck, blaring their propaganda out on the speakers the entire time. And it was so hard for me to focus on any conversation. It was just pure noise most of the time. Like, I couldn't pick up like little individual pieces of dialogue. So I had to turn on the subtitles to like even have anything to focus on. And so that's another thing that made it really hard, especially the first hour and a half of the movie. And so like, not only was the pace just so slow to me, it was like I couldn't focus in on any, like, I only got snippets of dialogue here and there, and that made it even harder for me to concentrate.
I like want to laugh the whole time you're talking, because that's one of the things I loved about this movie. It made it so real. People speak like that in real life. They speak over each other. There's always, if you're in a crowded space, there's going to be multiple conversations going on. And I know that for cinematic effect, it's easier and better to have one conversation happening with people silent in the back. But one thing that can turn a movie into a movie watching experience and instead into an immersive moment for you is to make it this realistic. And it was so realistic that I was sucked in and like eating it up. Give me a spoon, because I wanted to eat it up. I loved this, just listening to them all talk, and you get a little snippet over here and you get a little snippet over there. And then these two are talking over each other and you're trying to figure out what they're saying. Or in the airport, when the one girl is like, the lady from Here's Johnny.
Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, so Shelley Duvall's character comes on and she's trying to talk to Tom, and then Mary is over in a different part of the airport with her husband trying to get through, and then Barbara Jean is about to start singing, and the old man is, it switches over to him, and all of them are having distinct conversations that aren't manufactured for the movie. They are real conversations that are happening, and I loved that. I felt like I was there.
Yeah, for me, it was lost on me. It was just noise pollution.
I do understand
majority of the time, because even in a real conversation, you can block out and zone in on one conversation and tune some of the background noises off. And I just couldn't during this movie. It was like the levels were all the same.
I think it was meant to be like that.
Same hotness. I don't know, the same intensity. And it was just so hard to pick out.
Yeah.
Useful conversation that would move me in the direction of the story. And so that was kind of distracting for me.
Part of the problem there is that not much of it was useful a lot of the time. It was more just... And
supposedly that was his style.
Yeah.
Robert Altman's style. Like, actors love him because they could just go in and improv a scene, because there's very little dialogue, very little direction, and he was just kind of loose with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Even with the casting, they didn't have auditions for this movie. They just he just had conversations with people, and then he knew intuitively, like, this person is going to fit in this role.
In the movie.
Yeah, so they just offered them the roles, basically.
Was it so funny?
But it turned out, some really magical parts of the story. So I think the story plot involving Tom, he's basically a womanizer.
Yeah.
And the scene where he's, singing this "I'm Easy" song, he dedicates it to a special lady in the crowd, and there's like four different women
think he's
and
singing
they all
to them.
think they're singing to him, until like the very end they all kind of look, because he's kind of staring in the one direction at Linnea, the character of Lily Tomlin, and that was a pretty magical moment, just because the music was so good. It sucked you in immediately, and then it was almost kind of just like, I mean, if you listen to the words, it's like basically don't lie to me, and I can trust you, but it almost came off kind of this sinister type deceitful song because he was the one doing all the lying.
Was he lying? Do you feel like?
I don't think he was 100% honest, but he wasn't really trying to hide it either for the most part.
That scene you're talking about hypnotized me.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
Yeah, I could not look away from the screen.
It was a little before that when I started to really get sucked into the movie. And then that really just kind of solidified everything and brought me completely into the movie. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the last scenes in the end, I thought were really, really great and kind of poignant, and for a lot of different reasons.
So, story, what would you give this?
It's difficult. This is going to be a difficult one to rank just because the story is complex. There's so many characters to keep up with. The pacing for me is a little slow. It's not. The story doesn't really seem like it's moving anywhere for most of the film towards the end, and then it kind of leads up to a conclusion. I guess there were some hints throughout, but something that really wasn't expecting. And so if I had to give it a score, I would say maybe a 7 out of 10 for me. And that's me being generous.
Wow. Okay. My view on it is a little different. I feel like while the story wasn't what you typically expect from a movie, and while there weren't the typical beats that you subconsciously expect when you're watching film, I thought the way he managed to intertwine all of these 24 stories and make them all touch each other's lives in one way or the other, and to do it in a not very overt way, to make all of them come to a satisfactory connection and journey, to give each of these 24 people a distinct personality and character traits and motivation, is incredible to me. And how you manage to tell a story like that without, subverting typical movie beats is like, it can either go really, really badly because they're there for a reason, or it can go really, really great. And I think it went great. And I'm going to give the story a 9.5.
Wow. See, I didn't even feel like there was a good mesh. I felt like there was really 5 character stories that were the main plots and subplots. I don't think Shelley Duvall's character added anything whatsoever to the story. I don't think Jeff Goldblum's character...
Shelley Duvall had to be there, or else what happened in the end wouldn't have happened.
What do you mean?
If not for Shelley Duvall's character, the final scene wouldn't exist. And we can talk about that in the spoiler section if you want. But she's the reason that the opportunity that presents itself in the final scenes presents itself.
You're going to have to explain it to me because I don't understand what you're saying there.
Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum's character was...
I kept thinking, is this the guy? First off, I looked at him and I said, Ryan, that's Jeff Goldblum.
I don't think he had a single line in the
whole
thing.
I kept thinking, is
not
this
really real interactions with anybody.
Is this the politician? That's what I kept thinking.
No, they never
and
said
it wasn't him in the end. Yeah. Yeah, he was random. That was very random. But then again, aren't there random weird people in life all the time? All right, I'm reaching, okay? I'm reaching.
Yeah, you're reaching. Anyway. So that was story. Acting.
Do you want me to go first? Okay. I've said this a couple of times, there are different levels of acting to me. There is incredible, accomplished acting where you're having an emotional scene and you play it really, really well and you get your pain across to people. And then there's just acting like a normal human being on screen and making people think you're just living life. And I love that. I love how people manage to capture someone who isn't them, but they turn themselves so fully into it that you feel like it's just them and that you're just watching their life play out. I love that. And I felt like the acting was great, but also I wonder if there were a lot of opportunities for the actors to like really, really shine. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think that since the baseline of this movie is so normal, that there was just no like there were some standout scenes that I really liked. Barbara Jean did some really great stuff towards the end of the movie, and then her husband comes in and I like a lot of what he does too. So I think I'm more partial to the story in this movie than I am to the acting, but the acting wasn't bad to me. I felt like everybody played their part well and played their character well. I was obviously annoyed with Opal, so she played her character well for me to be annoyed by her because she was meant to be annoying. Randomly, Barbara Streisand's husband was in this movie.
Yeah,
as himself.
So I saw that 3 different big Hollywood actors were actually in town, and they came by and saw Robert, the director, Robert Altman, and he was like, "Hey, you want to get in this movie?" And he just like worked him into the movie. That's how those characters
That's
came
really
in there.
funny. I was like, that's actually Barbara Streisand's husband. Why is he here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say that the acting, man, that's so hard for me though, because they're acting what they've been given, and what they were given was to just be normal people in Nashville. And I think they did a really good job of that. But also it's not like the best acting I've ever seen in my life. So I think I'm going to give the acting an 8.2.
See, I thought the acting, we're just going to be opposites this whole thing. I thought the acting was actually pretty strong on all fronts, even though I didn't really care for the story that much, especially when you're considering the singing part that went along with that.
The singing was so good.
Some excellent acting, especially Lily Tomlin, Ronnie Blakely. Ted Beatty was really good too. He was the lawyer, the husband lawyer. There's some really good characters in here, and I thought they were all excellent. Even like the Lily Tomlin's kids, the deaf actors, they did fantastic.
They were just kids living life at the dinner table. I love that. I love seeing people act like just people.
Yeah, so I think the acting is actually one of the shining things about this movie, and I'm gonna give it 8.9.
We're only a couple of points off. So I think we agree there.
Cinematography.
Still find it so weird that Jeff Goldblum just showed up, by the way.
Yeah.
That was so weird.
He was
and then there was Shelley
character
Duvall, who I immediately recognized, and those were the only people I really, right off the bat, knew who they were. Anyway, cinematography.
So I talked a little bit about the sound. I wasn't a big fan of. There's some thematic elements that were kind of incorporated, the red, white, and blue with the politics, all kind of weaved in throughout this musical, I don't know, I want to say this country music Hollywood, basically, and how it kind of touches every little aspect of almost every scene, including the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of neat. It may be a little overstated. I don't think we needed all of it to get the point, but point was taken nonetheless. So I think There's some really good, that scene where they're in the little concert hall where he's singing, and it's like looking past through the crowd, and they're just,
as she's having this decision, she's making this decision in her mind, and you see it as the camera closes in on her. She's deciding what.
Those are some pretty cool moments as well. Yeah. So maybe 8.5 for cinematography for me. There nothing super artsy that stood out. It was just solid, and then just some few little moments there that were really great. But the thing that brought it down for me mostly was just the sound levels were funky to me.
Yeah. Well, I like I said before, I do think that's intentional. I think it was meant to be that way. And what was the like shining star of the cinematography for me was the way you were placed in all of the action. When you were in a crowded room, the camera would almost like pan like somebody would if they were looking throughout the room, their attention going from one conversation to the other. When they're out having their picnic on his parents' land, you're going from, you're like being carried almost like you're walking through yourself. You're walking through all of this.
Through a crowded room from person to person, and eavesdropping on their conversations.
Really, he made it feel like you were there. It was very immersive to me. And as the sound like takes away for you, it just adds to me. It made me feel so present. And I feel like the camera work did the same thing for me. It made me feel like I was up on the stage with the people who were part of Barbara Jean's company. As we're watching in the Grand Ole Opry, we're seeing the crowd, and we're seeing the people singing and talking. We're not in the crowd with everybody else. It's like, again, you're inserted into the inner circle and allowed to be a part of everything that's going on. And I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. And this rating is more for me about enjoyability than it is about saying, man, that's just some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. And I would say probably cinematography for me upped the enjoyment so much that I'd put it closer to a 9, but not quite. So maybe an 8.8, almost a 9. I almost just want to say 9, but I won't.
Okay. And what was the wow factor for you?
I didn't remember you were going to ask this question until it just happened. Obviously to hammer you over the head with the theme the same way he did with the red, white, and blue. It's the same thing I've been saying since the movie started. The way this movie just makes you feel like a piece of the movie itself. You feel like you're in there in the action where you're not supposed to be. You're almost like a better opal. You just know how to be quiet and capture it instead of inserting yourself everywhere. I think that's probably the wow factor for me. And the way that he makes you care about and enjoy a story that is very long. It's never boring to me. I know it was boring to you, but something being boring is so subjective, I guess, that it's hard to define. But the way he managed to have such a large cast of characters, to have essentially a Seinfeld level of nothingness going on for a lot of the movie, and to just make, I almost feel like even the sound is part of the wow factor for me. I think those are probably the 3 things that I would put on my wow factor list, and I'd give it a 9 and 9.3 for wow factor for me. The songs, I also would like to add the songs. Wow. So many of those songs had me near crying or like I used that word earlier. It literally hypnotizes you. You're sucked in. You don't want to look away from the TV. You're leaning closer to it. It's hypnotizing, some of that music. And I also liked how some of the music was just so old country. Like, I love mom and daddy and they love me too. I used to live out on the farm. So did you. I like, it was just simple and quaint, and I liked it.
Okay.
I just used that as an opportunity to gush about how much I liked this movie, but
Now, the only wow factor for me was really the music.
Yeah.
The music, and there's some really exceptional songs and singers in this movie, and so that's the wow factor for me.
I think we've gotten so used to overproduced music that it was very refreshing to hear people just sing with good hearty voices. I liked it.
Yeah, I'd probably give it about 7.5 for me.
Yeah.
So, all right, you want to rank it?
Well, is this a top 100 movie to you?
No.
It's not a top 100 movie to you?
I don't think so. Not for me. It was probably one of the least enjoyable movies that we've watched so far to me.
What?
I know.
At least one of the least enjoyable movies we've watched so far.
You know how much I like.
If you say you would rather watch Mutiny on the Bounty.
I raged against Mutiny. Okay. It was better than Mutiny on the Bounty.
Okay. How much you raged against what?
You know how much I raged against the Maltese Falcon because there was so much lying going on. I couldn't trace a plot line. I like Maltese Falcon much better.
Utter tomfoolery, and you know it.
Not really. Not for me.
That's shenanigan.
No.
Are you going to ask me if I think this is a top 100 movie or not?
If they would have cut off the first hour and a half and just gave me the last 45 minutes, it would have been a great movie.
That's not the point of this movie, is not to give you a succinct rise and fall story. The point of this movie is to immerse you.
But I wasn't
in an
immersed.
Experience.
I didn't even get into the movie until hour 2. That's what I'm saying. And that's why it was not a top 100 movie for me. It was not enjoyable for the most part for me.
You are entitled to your opinion.
Is this a top 100 movie for you?
Thank you so much for asking, Ryan. It is a top 100 movie to me. Yes, indeed. Would you say this is a bucket list movie?
Let's say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
No, absolutely not. This is a chuck it list movie.
You're not even going to say that it's like a good movie to watch. Sometimes you're going to say it's a full-on chuck it.
Like I said, there's a few magical parts in this movie, but overall, it's not my favorite by a long shot.
Is a thing you're allowed to say.
So should we?
It's like a vein popping up in my.
I'll go ahead and won't share my screen because I'm not ranking it. Oh gosh,
you're joking.
But I'll let you go ahead and share yours.
Great.
And then we'll get into the spoilers. Because I have one other fast little fun fact for you.
Okay. Well, I have Good Will Hunting first and Stagecoach number 10. Stagecoach is leaving my list today.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Terms of Endearment is coming down.
What?
And I think it's gonna stay there. I think I'm gonna put Nashville at number 9.
Wow, I can't believe you put Stagecoach.
I almost want to put it above. I almost want to put it above Rear Window and Pulp Fiction.
Are you insane?
I almost want to put it number 7. I really enjoyed this movie.
Wow,
I really enjoyed it. My issue here is what it always is.
Third Man up there, so I can expect.
Third Man was a fantastic movie.
A million times better than this one.
Okay. Moving on, Nashville is doing the same thing. This is the same thing that happens to me. I get to the point where I am trying to balance enjoyability with how good the movie is overall, because sometimes enjoyability trumps everything else for me. But then when it comes to rating, I have to think, well, I think just objectively, Rear Window and Pulp Fiction are both better movies than Nashville. But I almost enjoyed Nashville so much that I would put it up above those two, but it's not quite that much. But
mind blown.
I would chuck it. It's not a top 100 movie.
My head just exploded.
My mind's blown.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the spoilers, I would like to say I'm loving all the Spotify comments. Please keep leaving them. We love hearing from y'all. Secondly, follow us on Ryan and Kat's List on Instagram and feel free to message us there. One of our friends found the Instagram this week and I loved it because I got like all these notifications and I was like, yeah, I'm glad you're here, liking all this stuff. And also I do some, my side job combines with this job and I Photoshop a lot for our Instagram page and it's really great. So make sure to check that out.
Seamless and flawless, and
you wouldn't even know, honestly, if you didn't look super closely.
Picture. Yeah, I agree.
So we're going to move on to spoilers now.
Spoiler.
So do you want to share your fast fact first?
Well, let's just spoil the ending for people.
Okay.
You know, the very end scene where Barbara Ann is shot. Barbara Jean, sorry. Wow. Where Barbara Jean is shot by a fan.
He's not really a fan, but yeah.
Maybe he's at all her concerts. If you think about it, he was there before when she kind of had her little breakdown.
Who kills her, right?
I know that.
Okay.
The other guy that was carrying around his
I saw him at her breakdown too. Yeah.
He was everywhere that she was, and so there's that scene, right? And this was filmed in 1975. About 5 years later, John Lennon was killed. And Robert Altman got phone calls from, I want to say some of the big news. I want to say New York Times or something like that, but it may not have been that big, asking him if he felt responsible for the death of John Lennon because of his movie.
That's really gross.
And I just found that to be one of the most outrageous
really gross
things to try to flip on somebody.
Yeah.
I just thought was really crazy.
Couldn't have felt nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of the ending, you said that Shelley Duvall's character is useless. But what happens is she spends the entire movie flitting around from man to man, just messing around, and refusing to see her aunt who's dying. And the uncle's like, please see your aunt, please see your aunt, please see your aunt. So it's very consistent to her character that she never sees her aunt, even when she's dying. And even after the aunt passes away, they're at the funeral. Fiddle Guy is there because he's staying at Shelley Duvall's uncle's house. Uncle is there, but Shelley Duvall is not there.
Yeah, he goes to look for her.
So they're at the funeral though, right?
Yeah, and he gets mad.
And Shelley Duvall is not there. He leaves to go find her, and that pulls Fiddle Guy there. He wouldn't have been there if it weren't for Shelley Duvall's character, because he was at the funeral. So if Shelley Duvall's character hadn't pulled the uncle to the concert, and if Fiddle Guy hadn't followed the uncle, he never would have been at the concert to begin with. He was at the funeral.
Don't remember that at all. I don't know. I don't think her character is still integral to the plot at all.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why he would have shot her if he wasn't going to shoot her anyway.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And it makes no sense to go in there and go, all right, I'm going to go look for the granddaughter. Oh, by the way, might as well just shoot this person while I'm here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's something missing there that I don't know. Maybe I missed it, but it just doesn't, the dots don't connect for me.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and watch the scene again, but I don't know. I think he would have been there anyway. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Unless you think he killed Barbara Ann because he was upset. Barbara Ann, wow. Barbara Jean. Unless you think he killed Barbara Jean because he was upset that Shelley Duvall missed the funeral because of her.
No.
I'm stretching. Because I feel like, a lot of the characters that we see in the film are trying to go to Nashville to try to become famous. he doesn't. What's in his fiddle case? A gun,
I
right?
don't remember ever seeing him open it other than
I think the gun's in there.
Maybe.
And so I think he was going to Nashville to get famous, but not for his musical talent. Like some of the other ones were. He was going to kill that lady so he could become famous.
The picture on the violin case is a portrait of Kenny. So it's a portrait of him.
He had a portrait of himself on his violin case. Strange. And there's a scene where his father, he's talking to his parents, right? And they're like, come home. What are you doing?
They sound
distressed. Like he's not, I mean, obviously he's not mentally well, but it sounds like they probably know that.
Yeah.
There's hints throughout the movie where they talk about the Kennedy assassination and those type of things where they hint that something like that's going to happen throughout the movie. I didn't realize it till the end though. The other kind of frightening thing, and it's one of the, I guess you could say, magical story plot lines that was done well in this movie was the very end. There's this assassination that just happened.
Yeah.
You would think most people would be freaking out and taking off, and instead they're like, oh no, this is Nashville, we're not going to do things like this way. And a woman just gets up on stage and starts singing. And this horrible thing that just happened is almost like erased from everyone's memory.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it interesting that Barbara Jean was in all white when she was killed. And I think a lot of this is about, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you have to take that as some kind of commentary on innocence dying. And you think about when it was filmed and that it was, in the 70s and a lot of generational change and old ways dying. And probably the guy, the older singer, I can't remember his name because there's so many characters, but he kind of shouts out what you said. This is Nashville. This isn't going to happen here. But even though places like Nashville and little small towns are kind of insulated from the change that happens on the coast, it eventually does make its way in. So I think Barbara Jean dying in white like that while singing about mama and papa and old ideals, not old ideals, but those kind of ideals of like being home with mama and papa and just so innocent and pure and all dressed in white, and she gets murdered. And I just think obviously there's some kind of commentary there on the change of the times.
Yeah, she's the only character that everybody, even the other singers, like.
Yeah.
And she's universally liked by tons of fans, and you see what they do to her. She's pushed to work to such excess that she has kind of this mental breakdown and is in the hospital, and they're still pushing her. So I think there's some commentary on how celebrity were treated in that time. You know,
well, it happens now still. Look at Britney Spears. But anyway.
No, it's true. Right. And then how they kind of got manipulated, their popularity to, go to this political rally and that they weren't going to go to in the first place. Right. The husband was all about, no, we're not political whatsoever. And then the moment she gets involved with politics, she dies.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some deeper commentary going on there, and I think it can be interpreted in multiple different ways.
Yeah. But that's a great thing about art, right?
Yeah. And we may not have hit any of it. So, but yeah, it's, I think that's one of the interesting parts of the movie is the very end and like I said, that one scene with Tom where he's singing his I'm Easy song.
Yeah.
I think those are the two places where they did just something really, really good.
Yeah. But it just wasn't enough for you.
It just wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm. You said something interesting that maybe we didn't hit it, but that's the thing about creating art or creating movies or music or whatever, is you can have whatever intent you want as you're creating it, but once it's out there in the world, it's in the hands of the people who view it and consume it to decide what it's about and what it means, because it means something different to every person. So yeah, maybe we didn't hit on exactly what the director meant, but hey, that's art, right? So I loved it. You hated it. As a recap, you didn't hate it, but oh, you were nodding. Okay, he hated it.
I wouldn't say I hated it, but
yeah, it just wasn't for you. That's okay. It wasn't your cup of tea. That's all right.
It was not one of my favorite films that we've watched so far. It's towards the bottom of the list for me.
Well, I think you're gonna like next week's. It's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I've never seen it, but I've seen it. Obviously, I've seen like Family Guy references, so pop culture references to the movie. So I always love that when we watch a movie and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, the next couple ones look pretty good. So there's that, and then The Green Mile after that, and then
I also haven't seen The Green Mile. Who is in that?
Tom Hanks.
And
I don't know the actor's name.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll find out next week or a couple of weeks. Yep. I also wanted to tell you guys, if you comment on something and we don't say anything about it the next episode, it's because we often film 2 or 3 episodes ahead of release. So don't be discouraged if you've commented and we haven't read it out loud.
We'll get to you.
Commenting.
We'll get to you. But who knows? Maybe after we watch a few more, I will change my mind. We do have the Mulligans coming up.
That's true.
Right?
Sometimes you need a little while with a movie too, I feel like.
Yeah, there's some after now that we've watched some, I'm like, I probably should have not been so harsh. And I'll probably feel that way about Nashville. Some of them I think I was
not harsh enough on. I feel like I wasn't harsh enough on Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Well, it was our first one. It was hard to compare since we didn't have anything else to judge by. But okay, we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you guys for joining us. It's always good. It's always good, glad, good. Greetings.
Good, glad, good, great. Goodbye.
Grumph. That was good. Goodbye.